Hey, and welcome to Puzzlehead. This channel is all about engaging stories with clever twists, unexpected turns, and moments that will pull you in emotionally. So if you enjoy drama, surprises, and endings that truly hit, then you're in the right place. Subscribe and join us for stories full of secrets, intense moments, and satisfying outcomes. Now, don't forget to turn on notifications. The next puzzle is about to begin.
The text arrived at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, right as I was reviewing structural calculations for the new downtown bridge project. My phone buzzed against my coffee cup, and I almost ignored it. I wish I had. I'm in the hospital after a mental health crisis because you won't commit to our marriage. The doctors say I tried to hurt myself because of you. This is your fault, Ethan. I might not make it through the night. My hands started shaking. Vanessa had been distant lately, sure, but hurting herself? My wife of 3 years, threatening to end everything because I wouldn't, what? We were already married. What more commitment did she want? I grabbed my jacket and car keys, knocking over my coffee in the process. The hot liquid spread across my engineering drawings, but I didn't care. My boss, Mr. Kilpatrick, looked up from his desk with concern. Family emergency, I managed to say, already heading for the door. The drive to Mercy General felt like hours, though it was only 20 minutes through downtown Wilmington traffic. I kept replaying our last conversation, searching for signs I'd missed. She'd mentioned wanting to renew our vows, maybe have a big ceremony since we'd eloped in Vegas. I thought it was just romantic nostalgia. Was I really that blind to her pain? I stopped at the hospital gift shop and bought a dozen red roses. They seemed pathetic in my trembling hands, but I needed to show her I cared. That I was sorry. That whatever was broken between us could be fixed. The emergency room was chaos. Crying children, elderly patients in wheelchairs, the sharp smell of disinfectant mixing with human desperation. I approached the reception desk, roses clutched against my chest like armor. I'm looking for my wife, Vanessa Rhodes. She was admitted today for a mental health crisis. The receptionist, a tired-looking woman in her 50s, typed into her computer. Her frown deepened as she scrolled through records. I'm sorry, sir, I don't see anyone by that name admitted today. Are you sure she's at Mercy General? My stomach dropped. Check again. Vanessa Rhodes, Rhodes. She's 35, blonde hair, about 5'6". More typing, more frowning. Sir, we have no record of anyone by that name. Not today, not this week. Is it possible she was taken to Cape Fear Valley instead? I called Cape Fear Valley, then New Hanover Regional, then every hospital within 50 miles. Nothing. No Vanessa Rhodes, no mental health crisis, no self-harm incident. Standing in that sterile hospital lobby, holding wilted roses and feeling like the world's biggest fool, I did what any rational person would do. I called my wife, straight to voicemail. I called again and again. On the fourth try, I heard something that made my blood freeze. Background noise. Not the quiet beeping of medical equipment or the hushed tones of a hospital room. Laughter. Music. The clink of glasses. A party. My hands were steadier now, but for all the wrong reasons. I opened the Find My iPhone app we'd set up for emergencies. Her location showed up immediately, and it wasn't a hospital. The Seahawk Resort and Spa. 40 minutes south, right on the coast. 5-star accommodations, infinity pools, couples massage packages. I should have gone home. Should have called her parents, demanded an explanation, maybe consulted a lawyer about my wife's apparent mental breakdown and pathological lying. Instead, I got back in my car, those wretched roses still in my passenger seat, and drove toward what I somehow knew would be the end of everything. The Seahawk Resort was exactly the kind of place Vanessa had always wanted me to take her for anniversaries. Too expensive for a structural engineer's salary. Too pretentious for my taste. The valet looked at my 10-year-old Honda with barely concealed disdain, but I tipped him anyway. Old habits. The lobby was all marble and gold, with a fountain that probably cost more than my annual salary. I felt underdressed in my work clothes, clutching roses like some desperate romantic comedy protagonist, which I was beginning to realize I might actually be. I approached the concierge, a polished young man who looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine ad. Excuse me, I'm looking for my wife, Vanessa Rhodes. I believe she's a guest here. He consulted his computer with practiced discretion. I'm sorry, sir, but I don't see that name in our system. However, guest privacy policies prevent me from... She's not registered under her own name. I interrupted, pieces falling into place with sickening clarity. Try Brent Summers. The concierge's expression shifted slightly. Recognition. Mr. Summers is indeed a guest. However, I cannot provide information about... Where's the bar? He pointed toward a set of glass doors overlooking the ocean. Through them, I could see elegant people in expensive clothes, sipping cocktails and pretending their lives were perfect. Just like my wife had been pretending for God knows how long. I walked through those doors, still carrying the roses, and that's when I saw them. Vanessa was pressed against the bar, her back to me, wearing a red dress I'd never seen before. Her blonde hair was styled differently, more sophisticated, like she was trying to be someone else entirely. And she was kissing a man who definitely wasn't her husband. Brent Summers. I recognized him from Vanessa's law firm Christmas parties, her boss. 41 years old, divorced, drove a Range Rover and owned a house on the lake. Everything I wasn't. They were completely absorbed in each other, hands roaming, whispering private jokes. She threw her head back and laughed at something he said. The same laugh she used to save for me. The laugh I'd fallen in love with 6 years ago. I stood there for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds, watching my marriage dissolve in real time. The roses felt heavier with each passing moment, their thorns pricking through the plastic wrap and into my palm. That's when Vanessa turned around and saw me. Her face went through a series of expressions. Surprise, guilt, panic, and finally, calculation. Even caught red-handed, she was already planning her next move. "Ethan," she said too brightly, "what are you doing here?" Brent turned around slowly, and I saw something in his eyes that made my hands clench into fists. Not guilt or shame, but amusement. Like this was all some elaborate joke, and I was the punchline. "I got your text," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "About the hospital. The supposed self-harm scare. The mental health crisis. That was supposedly my fault." Vanessa's eyes widened, and she glanced at Brent. A silent communication passed between them. The kind that comes from closeness and shared secrets. How long had they been doing this behind my back? "I can explain," she started, but I held up the roses. "These are for you," I said. "I bought them at the hospital gift shop. You know, the hospital where you weren't actually in danger because of me." The bar had gone quiet around us. Other guests were starting to stare, sensing drama. Brent stepped forward, probably thinking he could intimidate me with his expensive suit and practiced authority. "Look, Ethan, this is awkward, but..." "Shut up," I said, not taking my eyes off my wife. "I'm not talking to you. Yet." Vanessa tried to step closer, her hand reaching for my arm. "Ethan, please. Let me explain. Brent is just an old friend, and we were discussing work, and..." "Work?" I laughed, and it sounded harsh even to my own ears. "Is that what you call it when you stage a medical scare to manipulate your husband while you're having an affair with your boss at a 5-star resort?" The words hung in the air like a slap. Around us, conversations stopped entirely. Phones came out. In the age of social media, my humiliation was about to become very public. "It's not what it looks like," Vanessa said, but her voice lacked conviction. We both knew exactly what it looked like. I looked down at the roses in my hands, their red petals bright against the white wrapping. Beautiful things with hidden thorns, just like the woman I'd married. "You know what?" I said, meeting her eyes. "You're right. This is my fault. I should have seen this coming." I handed her the roses and she took them automatically, confusion replacing calculation on her face. "But here's the thing, Vanessa. If roses have thorns, I'm about to find out just how sharp mine can be." The drive home from the Seahawk Resort passed in a blur of rage and humiliation. My phone had been buzzing constantly since I left the bar, and I finally pulled over to check the messages. Word travels fast in a city like Wilmington, especially when it involves a public confrontation at an expensive resort. "Dude, heard about Vanessa. I'm sorry, man. Sam. Ethan, call me. We need to talk. Dad. Holy crap, it's all over Facebook. Are you okay? Jenny from work." And then, the one that made my stomach turn. "Sorry, bro, didn't know you didn't know. Mike from the yacht club." Didn't know I didn't know. How many people had been watching my marriage crumble from the sidelines, feeling sorry for the clueless husband? How many pitying looks and awkward silences had I missed? I drove to the Wilmington Yacht Club, where I knew I'd find Sam working on the boats. If anyone would give me straight answers, it would be my best friend since college. Sam Patel had been the best man at my wedding, had helped me pick out the engagement ring, had assured me that Vanessa was the one when I'd had cold feet. The yacht club was quieter than usual for a Tuesday evening. I found Sam in the maintenance bay, elbow deep in an engine repair. He looked up when he heard my footsteps, and his expression told me everything I needed to know. "How long?" I asked without preamble. Sam wiped his hands on a rag, avoiding my eyes. "Ethan, man, How long, Sam?" He sighed, the sound heavy with guilt and regret. 6 months, maybe longer. I heard rumors before that, but I thought they were just, you know how people talk. 6 months. Half a year of lies, manipulation, and betrayal. Half a year of coming home to a wife who kissed me hello while planning secret rendezvous with her boss. Why didn't you tell me? I tried to hint at it, Sam said defensively. Remember when I asked if everything was okay at home? When I suggested you two should go to counseling? I didn't want to be the one to blow up your marriage based on gossip. So you let me look like an idiot instead. That's not fair, Ethan. You're my best friend. I was trying to protect you. I laughed bitterly. Protect me? From what? The truth? From making an informed decision about my own life? Other yacht club members were starting to notice our raised voices. I recognized most of them. Doctors, lawyers, business owners. The kind of people who thrived on scandal and would be discussing my humiliation over drinks for weeks. Look, Sam said, lowering his voice. I know you're angry and you have every right to be, but what are you going to do about it? What was I going to do? The question had been burning in my mind since I left the resort. Divorce, obviously. But that felt too simple, too clean. Vanessa had orchestrated an elaborate manipulation, faking a mental health crisis to make me feel guilty while she was off playing house with her boss. She deserved more than just legal papers. I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly who she really is, I said. Sam looked uncomfortable. Revenge isn't going to make you feel better, man. Maybe not, but it'll make me feel something other than stupid. I left Sam at the yacht club and drove to my house, the house Vanessa and I had bought together, with her name on the deed and her decorating choices in every room. It felt foreign now, like a stage set for a play I'd been unknowingly performing in. My laptop was still open on the kitchen table, and I sat down to do what any betrayed spouse in the digital age does. I started investigating. Vanessa's social media accounts were locked down tight, but she'd forgotten about our shared photo storage. Months of pictures I'd never seen before filled my screen. Vanessa and Brent at restaurants I couldn't afford. Weekend trips I thought were work conferences. Private moments that should have been ours alone. The most incriminating evidence was a series of text message screenshots she'd apparently sent to someone else, probably her friend Erica. They detailed her elaborate plan to manage me while she figured out her next move. Ethan's so predictable. I just have to cry a little and he does whatever I want. Brent's talking about leaving his wife. If that happens, I need to be ready to jump ship. The guilt trip about the hospital worked perfectly. He actually bought roses. That last message was timestamped just hours before I'd found them together. She'd been laughing about my concern for her well-being while I was racing through traffic, terrified I might lose her. I screenshot everything and started making copies. If Vanessa wanted to play games, I'd show her how a structural engineer approaches problem solving, methodically, thoroughly, and with careful attention to load-bearing points. My phone rang. Vanessa. Ethan, we need to talk. Do we? I asked. I thought you were too busy having a mental health crisis to talk. Don't be like this. Come back to the resort. We can work this out. Work what out exactly? Your affair with Brent? Your staged crisis threat? The fact that half the city apparently knew my wife was cheating before I did? There was silence on the other end then. It's not what you think. Really? Then explain it to me. Explain how you ended up tongue deep in your boss's mouth while I was buying you flowers at a hospital where you'd never been. You're being cruel. I'm being honest. There's a difference. She hung up. 5 minutes later, she called back. I'm coming home. We need to discuss this like adults. Don't bother. I won't be here. Where are you going? I looked around the house we'd shared, at the wedding photos on the mantle, and the future we'd planned together. All of it felt like evidence of a crime now. I'm going to visit some friends, starting with Brent's wife. The sharp intake of breath on the other end told me she hadn't considered that angle. Melanie Summers had always been friendly at firm parties, asking about my work and complimenting Vanessa on her career success. She deserved to know what her husband was doing with his legal assistant. Ethan, please don't what? Tell the truth? Isn't that what you should have done 6 months ago? I hung up and started gathering evidence. Photos, text screenshots, credit card statements showing charges at restaurants and hotels I'd never been to. Everything I needed to paint a complete picture of betrayal. My next stop was going to be very interesting. Melanie Summers lived in a beautiful colonial house on the lake, the kind of place Vanessa had always envied. I'd met her several times at firm events, and she'd always struck me as genuine, a sharp contrast to the polished fakeness that seemed to infect everyone else in Brent's orbit. I rang the doorbell at 8 p.m., still wearing my work clothes, carrying a manila folder full of evidence. When she opened the door, her smile faded quickly. She could probably read the situation in my expression. "Ethan, what are you doing here? Is everything all right?" "Hi, Melanie. I'm sorry to bother you so late, but I have something you need to see. It's about Brent." Her face went pale. "Come in." We sat in her immaculate living room, surrounded by family photos and evidence of a life built on what I now realized were lies. I opened the folder and spread the contents across her coffee table like a prosecutor presenting evidence. "I found these today," I said simply. Melanie picked up the first photo. Vanessa and Brent at a private dinner, his hand on her thigh, her lips near his ear. Her hands started shaking. "How long?" she whispered. "At least 6 months, maybe longer." She went through each piece of evidence methodically, her lawyer's training evident even in her personal devastation. When she reached the text message screenshots, she laughed bitterly. "She calls me the boring wife in here. Says Brent complains that I don't understand his ambitions." "I'm sorry, Melanie. I thought you deserved to know." She looked up at me and I saw steel beneath the hurt. "What are you planning to do?" "Honestly, I'm still figuring that out. But I'm done being the fool who doesn't know what everyone else knows." "Good," she said, surprising me with her vehemence. "They deserve whatever's coming to them." We talked for another hour, sharing stories and comparing lies we'd been told. Melanie was a family law attorney, and she gave me some practical advice about protecting my assets and documenting everything. More importantly, she gave me something I'd been lacking since the resort, an ally. "I have an idea," she said as I was getting ready to leave. "Brent's up for partner at the firm next month. The decision committee includes several people who value traditional family values." I smiled for the first time in days. That's interesting information, isn't it? The next morning, I called in sick to work and began what I privately called Operation Sunlight. If Vanessa and Brent wanted to conduct their affair in shadows, I was going to drag it into the brightest light possible. My first stop was Erica's coffee shop downtown. Erica had been Vanessa's best friend since law school, and if anyone knew the full scope of the betrayal, it would be her. I found her working the morning rush, efficiently managing orders while gossiping with regular customers. When she saw me, her expression became guarded. "Ethan, I heard about yesterday. I'm sorry." "Are you?" I asked, ordering a black coffee. "Because I'm wondering how sorry you could be when you helped her plan it." Erica's face flushed. "I don't know what you mean." I pulled out my phone and showed her the text message screenshots. These messages were sent to someone who knew about the fake hospital story, who knew about Brent, who helped her coordinate her lies. She stared at the screen and I watched her realize how much trouble she was in. "I never told her to stage a self-harm attempt," she said quietly. "But you knew about the affair. You helped cover for her. You let me look like an idiot while my wife was screwing her boss." Other customers were starting to stare. Erica glanced around nervously. "Can we talk about this privately?" "Why?" "Vanessa didn't give me the courtesy of privacy. She made my humiliation public. Why should yours be any different?" I raised my voice just enough to ensure the other customers could hear. "I mean, you knew my wife was cheating, and you helped her lie to me about it. That seems like something people should know about someone they're trusting with their coffee orders." "Ethan, please, did you laugh about it? When she told you about the hospital text, did you think it was funny that I was terrified she might die?" Erica's eyes filled with tears, but I felt no sympathy. She'd made her choice when she decided to be complicit in the betrayal. "I told her not to do it," she whispered. "I told her the hospital thing was too far." "But you didn't tell her to stop cheating. You didn't tell her to be honest with me. You just told her to be more careful with her lies." I left without another word, but I could hear the buzz of conversation starting behind me. By noon, half the downtown area would know that Erica had helped cover up an affair. By evening, it would be all over social media. My next stop was the yacht club. I found the usual crowd of retirees and business owners having their weekday lunch, discussing golf and politics. Perfect. I approached their table with confidence I didn't entirely feel. "Gentlemen, mind if I join you for a moment?" They welcomed me warmly. I'd been coming to the club for 3 years, and they knew me as Sam's friend and Vanessa's husband. Their expressions changed when I started talking. "I wanted to thank you all for your discretion regarding my wife's affair," I said conversationally, and I know several of you knew about it, and I appreciate that you tried to spare my feelings. The silence was deafening. Of course, now that it's public knowledge, I suppose we can discuss it openly. I have to say I'm impressed by how long Vanessa and Brent managed to keep it quiet. 6 months of sneaking around, fake business trips, elaborate lies. It's almost admirable in a sociopathic sort of way. Dr. Morrison, one of the club's most prominent members, cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Ethan, perhaps this isn't the best venue for—" "Oh, but it is," I interrupted. "You see, this is where it all happened. Brent's been bringing Vanessa here for months, introducing her as his associate. I have photos of them together at the bar, at club events, even using the private dining room I could never afford." I pulled out a folder and spread photos across their lunch table. "I thought you might be interested in seeing how they spent their time at your club, particularly since Brent's membership application for the exclusive inner circle is coming up for review." The photos told a clear story of closeness and deception. Vanessa and Brent holding hands at the bar, kissing on the deck overlooking the water, his hand on her lower back as they walked toward the private dining rooms. "This is highly inappropriate," Morrison said, but he was studying the photos with obvious interest. "Yeah," I agreed. "It is highly inappropriate. I'm glad we agree." I gathered up the photos and stood to leave. "I'll let you gentlemen get back to your lunch. I'm sure you have a lot to discuss." As I walked away, I could hear the urgent whispers starting behind me. Brent's reputation at the club was now thoroughly destroyed, and his chances of joining the inner circle had evaporated. My phone buzzed with a text from Vanessa. "Stop this. You're embarrassing yourself." I typed back, "I'm just getting started." The afternoon brought more strategic visits. I stopped by the gym where Brent worked out, the restaurant where he was a regular, the country club where he played golf. At each location, I shared just enough information to ensure the story would spread. By evening, my phone was buzzing constantly with calls and texts. Some were supportive, others were critical of my public campaign. I ignored most of them, but one call made me pause. "Mr. Rhodes, this is Detective Harlan with the Wilmington Police. We've received some complaints about maltreatment. I'd like to speak with you." "I'll be right there." The police station was exactly what I'd expected. Fluorescent lights, uncomfortable chairs, and the smell of bad coffee. Detective Harlan was a tired-looking man in his 40s who seemed more annoyed than concerned. "Mr. Rhodes, your wife has filed a complaint alleging maltreatment and stalking. She claims you've been following her, contacting her friends and colleagues, and making threats." "Threats?" I laughed. "The only thing I've threatened is the truth. She says you've been showing private photos of her to strangers." "I've been showing photos of her and her lover to people who deserve to know they've been lied to. There's a difference." Detective Harlan leaned back in his chair. "Look, I get it. Divorce is ugly, and you're angry. But you need to be careful about how you handle this. Maltreatment charges can stick, even when you feel justified. Am I under arrest? Not yet. But I'm advising you to back off. Handle this through lawyers, not through a public humiliation campaign." I stood to leave. "Detective, my wife faked a mental health emergency to manipulate me while she was cheating. She made me believe I was responsible for her so-called crisis while she was having an affair with her boss at a luxury resort. If that's not maltreatment, I don't know what is." "That may be true, but it doesn't give you the right to what? Tell the truth? Share facts? Show evidence of fraud and manipulation?" Detective Harlan sighed. "Just be smart about this, Mr. Rhodes. Don't let your anger turn you into the bad guy." As I left the police station, I realized he was right about one thing. I needed to be smarter. The direct approach was satisfying, but it was also risky. If I wanted real revenge, I needed to think like an engineer, systematically, strategically, with careful attention to cause and effect. It was time for phase 2. The law firm of Hartwell, Morrison and Associates occupied 3 floors of downtown Wilmington's most prestigious office building. I'd been there dozens of times for company parties and client events, always as Vanessa's supportive husband, making small talk and trying not to embarrass her with my blue-collar background. Today, I was there for a very different reason. I'd spent the morning researching the firm's partners, their clients, and their reputation in the community. What I found was interesting. Hartwell, Morrison, and Associates prided itself on family values and ethical representation. Their marketing materials emphasized trust, integrity, and moral leadership. Having a senior partner conducting an affair with a subordinate didn't exactly align with that brand. I dressed carefully for my visit, my best suit, conservative tie, leather portfolio. I wanted to look like someone who belonged in their marble and mahogany world. The receptionist, a polished young woman who'd always been friendly at parties, looked confused when she saw me. "Mr. Rhodes, are you here to see Vanessa? I believe she's in court this morning." "Actually, I'm here to see Mr. Hartwell. I have some information about firm personnel that I believe he should be aware of." Her expression became guarded. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but I think he'll want to see me. It's regarding potential liability issues related to workplace relationships." 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Thomas Hartwell, the firm's founding partner. He was exactly what Central Casting would order for a distinguished attorney. Silver hair, expensive suit, commanding presence. "Rhodes, I understand you have concerns about firm personnel." I opened my portfolio and placed a carefully curated selection of photos and documents on his desk. Nothing too personal, but clear evidence of an inappropriate relationship between a supervisor and subordinate. "I thought you should be aware that Brent Summers has been conducting an affair with my wife, Vanessa Rhodes, one of his direct reports. This has been ongoing for at least 6 months." Hartwell studied the evidence without expression. "These are serious allegations." "They're not allegations. They're documented facts. I have hotel receipts, restaurant charges on firm credit cards, and photographs taken at firm events and client entertainment venues." I placed additional documents on his desk. "I've also discovered that firm resources have been used to facilitate this relationship. Client entertainment budgets, business travel accounts, even the use of firm vehicles for personal trips." Hartwell's expression darkened as he reviewed the financial records. Misuse of firm resources was a serious matter, potentially exposing the firm to client complaints and regulatory issues. "What do you want, Mr. Rhodes?" "I want the truth to have consequences. Your firm markets itself on integrity and family values. Your clients trust you with their most sensitive legal matters. They deserve to know if their attorneys are capable of this level of deception and ethical compromise. Are you threatening to go public with this information?" I smiled. "Mr. Hartwell, I've already gone public. The question is whether your firm will address this internally or wait for it to become a bigger problem." He was quiet for a long moment, studying the evidence spread across his desk. "I'll need to investigate these allegations thoroughly. Of course. I'm sure you'll find my documentation is accurate and complete." I stood to leave, then paused at the door. "Oh, and Mr. Hartwell, you might want to review your firm's social media mentions today. The story seems to be gaining traction online." That wasn't entirely true yet, but it would be by evening. My next stop was the courthouse, where I knew Vanessa was representing a client in a custody hearing. I didn't go inside. That would have been actual maltreatment. Instead, I waited in the parking lot with a carefully prepared surprise. When she emerged 2 hours later, she found her car decorated with printouts of her text messages. Not the private photos, just her own words about manipulating her predictable husband and planning her jump ship strategy. She saw me leaning against my car nearby and stormed over, her face flushed with anger. "You're insane," she hissed. "This is maltreatment. I've already talked to the police." "I know. Detective Harlan seems like a reasonable man. I'm sure he'll be interested in your fabricated crisis when I file my own complaint for fraud and emotional manipulation." "You can't prove I faked anything." I pulled out my phone and played a recording. Her own voice. From yesterday's phone call. "The guilt trip about the hospital worked perfectly." Her face went pale. "You recorded our conversation?" "North Carolina is a one-party consent state. I can record any conversation I'm part of. It's amazing what you learn when you start researching legal issues." She looked around the parking lot, probably calculating how many of her colleagues might be watching this confrontation. "What do you want, Ethan?" "I want you to understand that actions have consequences. You wanted to play games with my emotions, manipulate me, humiliate me. Now you get to experience what that feels like. This isn't you. You're not vindictive. You're right. The old Ethan wasn't vindictive. But the old Ethan also trusted his wife, believed in his marriage, and thought he was building a life with someone who loved him. You ended that version of me. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears, but I felt nothing. After 6 months of lies, her tears were just another manipulation tactic. I made mistakes, but I never stopped loving you. Love? I laughed. You faked a mental health crisis to make me feel guilty while you were screwing your boss. That's not love, Vanessa. That's psychological misuse. I walked back to my car, leaving her standing in the parking lot surrounded by printouts of her own betrayal. That evening, I received a call from an unexpected source, Richard Farr, Vanessa's father. Ethan, I heard about what happened. Can we meet? Richard Farr was old Wilmington money. Family connections going back generations, and influence in business and politics. The kind of man who could open doors or close them with a phone call. He'd always been polite to me, but distant, clearly believing his daughter had married beneath her station. We met at his private club, a bastion of old Southern privilege, where I'd never felt comfortable. Tonight, though, Richard's demeanor was different. He looked tired, almost defeated. I owe you an apology, he said without preamble. I knew something was wrong with Vanessa's behavior, but I chose to ignore it. I failed you both. Mr. Farr, you don't need to— Yes, I do. What she did to you, the manipulation, the lies, that's not how I raised her. I'm ashamed. He signaled the waiter for another drink, then continued. I've spoken with Thomas Hartwell. The firm is conducting a full investigation into Brent's conduct. There will be consequences. I appreciate that, but it doesn't undo the damage. No, it doesn't, but perhaps I can make amends in other ways. He pulled out a business card. I have connections in the engineering field. Good firms that could use someone with your skills and integrity. I looked at the card. Morrison Engineering, one of the most prestigious firms in the Southeast. Why would you help me? Because you deserve better than what my daughter gave you. And because I believe in rewarding character over connections. It was a generous offer, but I sensed there was more to it. What's the catch? Richard smiled grimly. No catch. Just an old man trying to do right by someone who deserved better from my family. As I drove home that night, I felt something I hadn't experienced in days. Hope. Not for reconciliation with Vanessa, that ship had sailed, but for the possibility of a future beyond this mess. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Melanie Summers. Brent came home tonight. He's been suspended from the firm pending investigation. Thank you. Another text, this one from Sam. Heard about your meeting with Hartwell. The whole yacht club is talking about it. Brent's membership is being reviewed. And finally, one from Vanessa. You've destroyed everything. I hope you're happy. I typed back, I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped pretending it wasn't already broken. For the first time since finding those text messages, I slept soundly. 3 weeks later, the fallout from my campaign had exceeded even my expectations. Brent had been terminated from Hartwell, Morrison and Associates for misuse of firm resources and violation of workplace conduct policies. His membership at the yacht club had been revoked. His divorce from Melanie was proceeding rapidly, with her holding most of the cards thanks to the evidence I'd provided. Vanessa had been placed on administrative leave pending the firm's investigation into her role in the misconduct. Her reputation in Wilmington's legal community was in ruins, and several of her friends had distanced themselves from the scandal. I, meanwhile, had started my new job at Morrison Engineering, where Richard Farr's recommendation had opened doors to projects I'd only dreamed of working on. The pay was significantly better, the work more challenging, and my colleagues treated me with respect rather than the polite condescension I'd grown accustomed to. But Vanessa wasn't ready to accept defeat. She'd been calling constantly, alternating between tearful apologies and angry accusations. She'd shown up at my new apartment twice, begging for another chance. She'd even contacted my parents, trying to convince them that I was having a breakdown and needed intervention. The final confrontation came on a Friday evening at the Wilmington Riverwalk, where she'd asked to meet for one last conversation. I almost didn't go, but curiosity won out. I wanted to see what final card she thought she could play. I found her sitting on a bench overlooking the Cape Fear River, looking smaller and more vulnerable than I'd ever seen her. For a moment, I felt a flicker of the old sympathy, the protective instinct that had made me rush to a hospital where she'd never been. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down beside her. What do you want, Vanessa? I want to apologize. Really apologize. Not just try to manipulate you into forgiving me. I waited, saying nothing. I know what I did was unforgivable. The affair, the lies, the fake hospital crisis. All of it. I was selfish and cruel, and I destroyed the best thing in my life. If you know it was unforgivable, why are we here? She turned to face me, and I saw genuine pain in her eyes. Because I need you to know that I loved you. I know my actions don't support that, but it's true. I loved you, and I threw it away for excitement and validation and stupid, shallow reasons. You loved the idea of me, I corrected. You loved having a stable, predictable husband while you played out fantasies with your boss. That's not love, Vanessa. That's convenience. Maybe you're right, but I want you to know that losing you has been the worst experience of my life. Worse than losing my job, my friends, my reputation. Losing you made me realize what I'd given up. I felt no satisfaction in her pain, but no sympathy either. What do you want from me? Forgiveness, reconciliation, a chance to start over? I want you to be happy, she said, surprising me. I want you to find someone who deserves you, who won't take you for granted the way I did. I will. I know. She smiled sadly. You're a good man, Ethan. You always were. I just wasn't a good enough woman to appreciate it. We sat in silence for a while, watching boats move up and down the river. It felt like a funeral for our marriage, a final goodbye to the future we'd planned together. There's something else, she said eventually. Something you should know. I tensed, expecting another revelation, another betrayal to process. Brent never loved me. When everything fell apart, when he lost his job and his marriage, he blamed me for everything. He said I seduced him, that I was a manipulative homewrecker who destroyed his life. I'm sorry. Are you, really? I considered the question honestly. I'm sorry you were hurt. I'm not sorry he showed you who he really was. She nodded. Fair enough. What will you do now? Leave Wilmington. Start over somewhere else. I've destroyed too much here to rebuild. That's probably wise. She stood to go, then paused. Ethan? For what it's worth, you were magnificent. The way you fought back, the way you refused to be a victim. I've never seen you like that before. You'd never given me a reason to fight before. No, I hadn't. She leaned down and kissed my forehead, a gesture so familiar it made my chest ache. Goodbye, Ethan. Goodbye, Vanessa. I watched her walk away, her figure growing smaller until she disappeared into the evening crowd. It was the last time I would ever see her. 6 months later, I was working late at Morrison Engineering when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The message contained a single photo. Vanessa in a wedding dress, standing next to a man I didn't recognize. She looked happy, radiant even. I studied the photo for a long moment, waiting for some emotional reaction. Anger, jealousy, regret, something. But I felt nothing except mild curiosity about whether she'd learned anything from our disaster. I deleted the message without responding. A year after that, I received a wedding invitation in the mail. Sam was marrying Jennifer, a nurse he'd met during his recovery from a boating accident. The invitation included a handwritten note. Thanks for showing me what real friendship looks like. You're my best man, right? At the wedding reception held at the same yacht club where I'd once confronted Brent's cronies, I found myself surrounded by friends and colleagues who respected me, supported me, and genuinely cared about my well-being. I had a job I loved, a future full of possibilities, and the hard-won knowledge that I was stronger than I'd ever imagined. During his speech, Sam raised his glass and said, "To second chances, new beginnings, and the courage to demand better than we settled for before." I raised my glass and smiled, thinking about roses and thorns, about betrayal and revenge, about the man I'd been and the man I'd become. To getting what we deserve, I said, all of us. The crowd cheered, and I realized that my story wasn't really about revenge at all. It was about discovering my own worth and refusing to accept less than I deserved. Vanessa had wanted to break me with her betrayal, to reduce me to a pathetic, manipulated fool. Instead, she'd forged me into someone stronger, someone who wouldn't be taken advantage of again. In the end, that was the best revenge of all.